Hey people, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and in this case addressing a very common question that I get quite often, mostly here in the channel or in Instagram. My Instagram is furfile308. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you have the links down there. You'll also have the links for Amazon for my books, Street Survival Skills and Surviving the Economic Collapse, given the current economic crisis with banks. You probably want to check that out. And it's in moments like these when people start questioning and wondering what would happen if the system starts collapsing, if things get a lot worse, if it gets a lot more dangerous. And here is where I start getting more of these questions. Hey, Fernando, I have this shotgun from my grandfather. I have this rifle. My uncle goes hunting. My grandpa had this .22 carbine for target shooting or for pest control. Is this okay for security? And again, this is a topic I've covered many times, and the answer is usually yeah. I mean, yes, it's a gun, of course. It can be used for self-defense. Is it the best, coolest, latest tech? Is it as good as your AR or your M4 or your SCAR or whatever, your Glock? Well, probably not, but it is still a gun and is more than capable of being used for self-defense. So here I have a few guns that would be typically what you find in the gun rack of a farmhouse or someone that goes hunting every once in a while. Especially back in the day, double-barrel shotguns were fairly common for pretty much everyone. And yeah, these could be used for self-defense. I mean, not that long ago, a double-barrel shotgun was a coach gun. It was the gun that the guy had just to defend the stagecoach from bandits. And up until very recently, it was the go-to option for some serious guys in terms of policing and self-defense. There was many instances in which having two quick barrels at your disposal pretty much fixed most of the problems you were likely to be dealing with. It is still that case today, and there's a very good reason why. Usually when you fire a round out of your shotgun, probably most people with ill intent will go elsewhere. Now, if that doesn't solve the problem, you have another barrel at your disposal, okay? So yeah, usually a double-barrel shotgun works okay for self-defense. But it is not like our good old Uncle Joe Biden says, start blasting away like a lunatic when you hear something in the dark. That's what crazy people do. That's not what responsible gun owners do. It is true that even though you have those 2 rounds ready just by pulling each trigger, you're just limited to 2 rounds. And reloading requires quite a bit of practice and probably have a certain specific belt and be quite dexterous in terms of reloading. That shotgun has a automatic eject system, so it ejects on its own, but reloading that quickly, man, in the middle of a fight, it will not be easy. It will take a lot of training and a lot of practice. So it's not always the case that just buy a shotgun is the advice for everyone. In fact, I would strongly argue that typical semi-automatic carbine, .22, like the one you see there, would be even better. I mean, if I have to choose one or the other, I trust more my capacity of shooting accurately with the little tiny .22 and putting rounds where they matter and having 10 rounds at my disposal. I would rather have that over having the shotgun, which is just limited to 2 rounds. If you miss with one of those shots, which yes, you can miss with a shotgun, in spite of what you may have heard, it happens very often. It's also the case that people that are not that much into firearms, they probably don't even bother in buying the right ammunition. So if you have birdshot in your double-barrel shotgun, that could be problematic. You're much better off having one single round of .22, which will penetrate those mandatory 12 inches of penetration, rather than birdshot that is going to be quite limited in that regard. Now, you also have 10 rounds just by pulling a trigger without having to reload. That's going to be better than having, at least the way I see it, than having just 2 rounds. Could either one save the day? Of course. Both do those things all the time. But if push, if you're pushing it to the limit of things going wrong, I would rather have 10 rounds in semi-automatic, even if that is just 22, over just 2 rounds of 12 gauge or whatever it is, which is also something to keep in mind. Sometimes people have a shotgun that is in 16, 36, 410, whatever it is. You can go way too small and you're losing a lot of stopping power. I take a 22 long rifle over a 410 pretty much any day of the week. Even, and you have some of these buckshot for 410, man, you're looking at something very specific. If you care that much, you probably should be using some other gun. Then you have the typical bolt action rifle, your typical deer rifle. This is in 308, which is a very decent round, limited to 4-5 rounds. Usually that's the case with bolt action rifles like this one. This is a particularly nice one because it has a nice short barrel and it has iron sights. So the advantage, you're looking at a big bullet flying compared to a 22. Yeah, the stopping power of this thing, it is considerable. Whatever it is that you hit, it probably won't be there giving you much of a problem afterwards. That could be the case of 22. Some people think, oh, it's almost like an air rifle. No, it's not. If someone gets a couple rounds of 22 to the chest, his priorities will change immediately into not bleeding to death, not dying, over continuing with doing whatever it is that they are into. Whatever crime, whatever violence they're committing against you, once they have a few rounds of 22, they're most likely to change their mind. Has it happened before that people kept on fighting with 5-10 rounds of 45 ACP in the torso? Yeah, it is super uncommon, but it does happen. I'd rather go into having more ammo at my disposal rather than those very rare cases in which people take an entire mag dump and keep on fighting, right? Now, the advantage, power, yeah. If you're looking at a homestead, a rifle, probably bigger, longer ranges, this can be an asset, even though you have a bolt action to operate between shots and you have a very limited capacity. But the power is definitely there. Now, a warning here in terms of hunting rifles: if you have a scope mounted for longer distances, you want to consider what is the most likely scenario, because there's a good chance by which you would be better served either removing that scope and just leaving the iron sights like I have there, or replacing that scope if your rifle doesn't have a iron sights like mine, replacing it with a red dot without magnification. That would be more suited for most self-defense scenarios. It is a case sometimes that a person has either a hunting revolver. It's not really all that common. If someone has a hunting revolver, they're probably into firearms enough so as to have a more complete battery of guns, including guns for self-defense. But let's say you have a 357 Magnum, a 44 Magnum as a bear gun. Yeah, absolutely. That can be used for self-defense all day long, and it's probably a great option, maybe even better than some of the ones mentioned before. So that is something to keep in mind. Even with a longer barrel like my Python over there, 6 inches, it's really not all that long. And if you use this thing for self-defense, I mean, you could do a whole lot worse. It is very decent, and even though limited to 6 rounds, you're talking about 357 Magnum and a very solid format, very reliable gun, even though it's not as solid and robust as a modern day service pistol. But man, if it's kept in good condition, you have 6 rounds of 357 Magnum at your disposal by simply pulling the trigger. So it is, a 44 Magnum, a lot more recoil. Maybe you want to go with some loads that are not all that hot, but yes, excellent alternatives. One of the things I'd like to bring up is you always have the option of, moving to something different. I know that for some folks out there, money is tight. Money is tight for everyone these days, given everything going on. But there's still a possibility that you could just turn one of these guns in and maybe get something that's more suited for your needs. And a pump-action shotgun, that's a very decent home defense gun. I mean, it's also the case that many pump-action shotguns are used for hunting. Those, though, are usually more on the shorter magazine capacity. You'll usually see very long barrels, chokes, and maybe 4 or 5 round capacity in the magazine. Now, I have this one here because this is a gun that I got for like, I think I paid $250 for it. You know, don't quote me on that, but it was around that price. And being completely honest, this is actually a tactical model of the Mossberg. But it is true that if you have a longer barrel and you have a longer magazine, well, that is 7 rounds that go in there. So you have decent firepower in spite of having a pump-action shotgun. But if you're like trading in one of your other guns and going for something else, I got this one very cheap. It had the safety was broken, so I replaced that with a steel one myself. Again, a model that I know very well, Mossberg 500. I know how to replace parts and fix whatever needs fixing. And yeah, for very cheap, I got a nice, cool shotgun. And this is the 500 ATP model. I think it's a tactical police model. But yeah, you will find this as a duck gun in some cases, maybe not with that large of a magazine, but something along these lines works very well for self-defense too, especially if you have those iron sights where you can push it a little bit more with slugs, with Brenneck or some other solid single projectile. Anyway, guys, as always, subscribe to the channel, share, leave your comments below if you have any questions. I do check the videos first couple of days that I uploaded them, and you have my books there in the links below. See you next time.